Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 298, Leading Differently as an Introvert. If you thought being blinded by a crush was the preserve of teenagers and young adults, let me disavow you of that delusion right here. There is another more surprising slice of the population who consistently display a rather inappropriate crush. And I'm talking about the ones drinking the Kool-Aid, who are infatuated with the overconfident, loudly charismatic leader archetype. This has caused far too many introverted leaders to hesitate in stepping forward because they don't see themselves reflected in the existing leadership of their organisation. And the idea of having to compromise who they are and submit to the performative expectations is just too much. Workplaces are starved of thoughtful leadership, reflective decision-making and inclusive calm, all of which starts with the self. Since the 1980s, we've been conditioned to think that true leadership presents itself like a polished keynote. The end result is that far too much of the corporate culture we're part of is behaving just like a teenager with a crush, blinded to reality and falling for the confidence over substance time and time again. But here's the twist. While the corporate sheep are busy swooning over the dazzling showmen and adopting their being a bastard in business is what gets results, there's a quieter, more sincere, thoughtful kind of leader intentionally changing everything behind the scenes. And in this episode, I'm proposing that the time has come to shine a light on that authentic leadership, and in doing so, highlight the pimples on and manipulation of the crush. And this time, my focus might be taking a somewhat surprising turn, as I'm talking about something almost taboo in current leadership circles: kindfulness. We have so many examples right now of the bully boy type of leader who thinks it's okay, no, required to criticise or even humiliate people in public. What does this create? Fearful followers who know that unless they toe the line, they could be next. Gosh, history certainly has a way of repeating itself, doesn't it? And yet, when it does, the bullies and the fearful attempt to justify why it's not the same at all. Well, I see you, and it is the same. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. So leadership that's truly fit for purpose in these raging as opposed to roaring 20s is entirely different. It's time to focus on competence, emotional intelligence, and kindful presence. Now, I know what I'm about to share may well upset a few introverts who've been led to believe that introversion is the same as misanthropy, the hatred of other people, meaning that their thoughtlessly or intentionally unkind behaviour can be excused. It cannot. If there is a flutter of uncomfortable recognition, wake up and take responsibility. The inspiration for this take on leadership came from my listening this week to Graham Alcott's book, Kind, The Power of Kindness at Work. And before you think, oh, this doesn't apply to me, just remember that anyone, anywhere in a workforce can choose kindness. And when they do, the ripple effects into their personal lives is so powerful. As Alcott says, nice is about telling people what they want to hear. Kind is about telling people what they need to hear. So the reality is, nice is ineffectual and a cop-out. I realise that there is a point worth making, though, which is that, in my way of thinking, kindness runs on a continuum. Kind words and deeds are at one end, unkind at the other, and neutral somewhere in the middle. Maybe both ends are active, requiring intentionality, but the neutral middle territory might be the passive terrain. So it's not as though what we do is either kind or unkind. It's more nuanced than that. Maybe it will be helpful to offer an example related to leadership. One of the tasks that many leaders dislike having to do is provide actionable, so constructive, feedback. Imagine I have a team member who is failing to meet clearly agreed and documented expectations. At the kind end of the spectrum, we sit together and I explain which expectations they are not meeting and ask them to explore what the problem is. I need to be honest, clear, have compassion and empathy, and treat them with respect. None of us really know what's going on in other people's lives. I'll need to bring my best listening skills and park any niggling judgment or bias. This builds trust, ownership with accountability, and learning. This is intentional kindness, which I'd like to propose becomes the norm in business and in families, come to that. So what would you put at the other end, the unkind end of the spectrum? Well, clearly there is the harsh, shaming type conversations. Notice how I struggle to bring myself to even call that feedback. But it's focused on honesty without care. The resultant fear is demoralising and damages engagement. Most of the broligarch community pride themselves in how they operate at this end of the spectrum. Can't take it? Man up. And there is also the cruel, disrespectful type of conversation where the intention is to exert power through mockery and humiliation. This clearly breaks psychological safety and serves to build resentment. Kindness is definitely the antidote to the bro-negativity that I'm witnessing. But there's something else at the unkind end of the spectrum that might surprise you, I think. Ready? Also lurking at the other end, the unkind end, is trying to be nice so as not to upset someone. So you avoid having the difficult conversations altogether. Hang on, I hear you cry. How is that unkind? Surely unkind is really just saying or doing something nasty or destructive. Let's spend a moment to unpack how we are being unkind when we are avoidant. The person doesn't know the truth as you've not been honest with them. Therefore, they cannot improve in order to meet your expectations, so they're on a hiding to nothing. And why do we soften or avoid these feedback conversations? Typically, it's to protect ourselves, although we'll try to justify it as protecting the other individual. Poppycock. The only person you're really protecting is yourself, and you're saving yourself from those awkward conversations that really get to the truth. So for all of those introverts avoiding the difficult conversations, please now see how you are being at best avoidant and at worst unkind. So I suggest it's time to stop making excuses. Now, what about this neutral middle ground then? When it comes to feedback, I think this includes being too busy to notice where expectations are going unmet. Again, it's probably from a position of self-protection because it's certainly not helping the other individual. So the kindness continuum seems to be heavily weighted with many things at the unkind end when it comes to feedback. That may mean that we have to work extra hard to say and do things with and for our team members that are genuinely kind. And why not do this exercise with your team and or family if you're ready to hear the truth and build psychological safety? I also think as a leader, this is a useful continuum to explore with other aspects of leadership. That's going to be so revealing and potentially healing, although not entirely comfortable. Personally, I'm aligning myself with those individuals strong and brave enough to be kind. And yes, it takes both of those qualities to be kind, and the benefits are compelling enough to make it worthwhile. They include things like better engagement, higher trust, better mental health, lower anxiety, and better productivity. Most of the organisations I work with would pay good money for those benefits, but will they be kindful enough to deserve them? I'll keep nudging and pointing introverted leaders in the direction of the Flourishing Introvert playbook, because as I shared in my weekly Reflections newsletter, kindfulness is going to have its own special place. You can sign up for these reflections at flourishingintroverts.com. So the simple question for every listener is, why would you choose to be anything but kind? The kind ones are the ones I'll be unashamedly having a crush on. They are my sassy, quietly rebellious ones who are committed to improving workplace culture in their own understated but effective way. And as Alcott says, kindness is badass, which makes it a wonderful example of positive rebellion in my book. So leading differently is much needed right now, and as introverts we're not only well placed to do just that, ironically people kind of expect it of us too. So now is a time to capitalise on our difference, to use our unfair advantage so we benefit ourselves and those whose lives we touch. Now, here's an invitation to be positively rebellious. I invite you to tag me in a post on LinkedIn about the impact of a kind word or deed, not in a glory hunting way, but as a way to continue the spread of the kindness movement. Use the hashtag #KindIntroverts and I'll support your post. Kindness really is the only way to go, don't you think? If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.